Welcome to today's 10-minute Sunday School. We are continuing in our series on worship, and today we are on the second part of revolutionizing worship by understanding God's holiness. So grab a pen and paper, make sure that you pause the video to pray if you haven't done that yet, but let's go ahead and jump right into the lesson. So as we continue with revolutionizing worship by understanding God's holiness, we come to the first point, the holiness of God. Now, like I said in the introductory video, we're going to be repeating some of the things because it's important to have that groundwork to really understand it. The thing about holiness, or even the word holy, is that it's kind of hard to define. And so that's why we're spending a little bit of time kind of going over some of those things again as well. So, holy is how worshipers describe God. So let's look at a verse here that talks about that. Exodus 15:11. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders? We know that Moses, this is Moses' song. This is here, him speaking here. And he is explaining that God is holy, right? Who is like unto thee? It's a rhetorical question because the answer is nobody. Specifically, who is like the glorious in holiness? Of course, nobody. And so as Moses is worshiping God, he is declaring the holiness of God as one of the reasons to worship God. All right. And then here's another thing. Holy is how God describes himself, right? If we look in Hosea 11:9, he says, I will not execute the fierceness of mine anger. I will not return to destroy Ephraim, for I am God and not man, the Holy One in the midst of thee, and I will not enter into the city. Now, understand that there's a lot of verses that we can put here. There's probably like 10 verses where God uses holiness to describe himself. But we know that when someone is wanting to describe themselves, they usually give the most, what's the most important attribute, right? So think about it, if you have to give like a 10 word bio or something like that for a profile you're making for a job interview or anything like that, just a short description of yourself. Usually you try to incorporate those things that you want people to know about you. And so God uses holiness to describe himself often, and that's because he wants you to know that about him, right? And he says in here a very interesting point that I've made a few times, right? He said, I am God and not man. And you see, that's the big problem that a lot of people have with their understanding of Scripture and understanding who God is as revealed in Scripture, is that they always view God from a man's perspective, as in, if a man took this action that God took, well, it'd be wrong because a man doesn't know all the details. He doesn't know all the what ifs. But God isn't man. He does know all the details. We already went over in the last section of the series about having faith in God and believing who he is. We already went over the fact that God is omniscient. So God is not man, and he does not act as a man. He is totally beyond man, right? And that is one thing that makes him unique and holy, right? Where on earth, we would say humans are the most intelligent beings on the planet, and it's not even close, right? I know that they say like dolphins are smart and stuff like that. I'm sorry, but dolphins, I don't see them building any submarines or building, I guess for them, they'd be building some sort of apparatus where they can walk on land. Dolphins are not as smart as human beings are, right? Humans are the most intelligent beings on the planet, but it's not even comparable to the knowledge and wisdom of God, okay? So he uses holiness to describe himself, and in that description, he also talks about the distinction between him and man. All right, holiness is God's nature. It's the way God is. It's just him through and through, right? 1 John 1:5. This then is the message which we have heard of him and declare unto you, that God is light and in him is no darkness at all. Now, like I said, holiness sometimes can get a little bit difficult to explain and describe. And one way that we think of holiness, especially when we talk to Christians about being holy, is we talk to them about it in a moral purity kind of sense. Like that's the angle we're coming from, that if you're holy, you're doing right. And it is true. It is true that holiness does have to do with moral purity. And 1 John 1:5 uses that to describe God, right? He is light and in him is no darkness at all. That's talking about the moral purity of God. Now, of course, since morality is set by the standard of God himself, of course, he is moral, right? And there's no darkness in him. So yes, God's holiness does extend to the moral aspect of things, but it goes beyond that as well. Matthew 6:9, after this manner, therefore pray ye, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So we know this is the model prayer, Jesus teaching the disciples how to pray. And the first part of this prayer, we would call it adoration, right? And so he says, our Father which art in heaven. So recognizing that God is above all. He's above his creation. He's beyond his creation. And that is the reason, because of his holiness and his distinction and his separation from creation, that's the reason why we would hallow his name, that we would treat it with respect and we would venerate it. That's the reason why we would do that, is because God is holy, because he is unique. And so going through all of this, everything that we've said so far, understand that it is the uniqueness of God, the fact that he is so far beyond anything in creation, that is the thing that makes him worth worshiping. That is the thing that makes him holy, right? And that's what's so special about him. So I know this is a little bit of a shorter lesson today, and it's one of those things that if I would have combined it with tomorrow's lesson, it would have been way too long. And so I figured we'd just do it this way. But we will catch you tomorrow. I want to thank you for joining us for a 10-minute Sunday school. God bless you and have a good day.